What's cracking, everybody? Felrose here, bringing you Pokemon Go Battle League content, along with my little sidekick, Miss Maggie's here. Sidekick, Miss Maggie's here. It's late, leave me alone. So we're here to talk about today about sidekick. We're here to talk about the Ultra Premier Cup that is coming in this Thursday at about Niantic time, about 3 p.m. Central, if you're not aware. So what we're going to do with this particular meta breakdown is we're just going to go down the rankings because I don't feel like grouping them all, and it just seems like it makes more sense to just talk about each individual pick and tell you why they are and maybe aren't good. We'll go through maybe the top 30 or 40 and then pick some less common, maybe some more spicy stuff. It looks like it might have play here. And to be completely clear about all of this, like, we're only going to go through the top meta, but I mean honestly, anything down to like number 100 something. I mean, there's like a lot of Pokemon in this cup that have play. So if you have most of, if you have anything in like this top, like, 50, 60, 70, like you can make something happen here. You don't have to have the top like 5 Pokemon, because look at this. Literally all but like 2 Pokemon in the top 10 are XL. It's disgusting. So anyway, Trevenant, guys, is the first one here, and you can play a Trevenant XL or a non-XL Trevenant. Personally, I play a non-XL Trevenant because I don't have that kind of Stardust laying around. But so Trevenant's going to be able to beat the Waters. It's going to be able to beat the Psychics, the Fighters, even Venusaur, because of the fact that it's literally grass poison. And then, as usual, I mean, Trevenant's something we all know about already, right? It loses to, like, the dark types. It loses to even flying types. So Dragonite gives it a, bit of a run for its money, because it does get to those Dragon Claws faster than the Trevenant can get to those Shadow Balls. And then Walrein literally just has to land one Icicle Spear and it wins the matchup. So that's probably why it's listed here as a loss. And Talonflame, fire type. You could flip Talonflame if you land the Shadow Ball, though. So it's worth noting. But so Steelix is a new addition to the meta, and Steelix having Dragon Tail, and in this meta it's usually going to run Psychic Fangs and Crunch, and it's going to forego the Earthquake, which is interesting to me. But when you see why, it actually picks up the Mandibuzz matchup in the one shield with Psychic Fangs rather than having Earthquake, because with Earthquake it's just going to get walled. Psychic Fangs allows those Dragon Tails to do more damage over, and just, it's like literally if you were to give Nidoqueen Dragon Tail and make it really thick. Like, that's essentially what Steelix has now become. So it does lose pretty tough against the Waters and the Grounds and even the Fires. So Empoleon, G-Fisk, the Swampert, Charizard, Talonflame, like, those are losses for the Steelix. But it can absolutely destroy the poisons like Nidoqueen. It also has a really good time against things that it's got so much bulk that if it can resist the opponent's moveset in really almost any way, or the Dragon Tail is just like in a long drawn out matchup, that stuff just adds up so quickly that the longer the matchup goes on for, the better Steelix is going to do. Personally, I just finished making a Steelix, and I think I'm going to give it a whirl in this cup, but I haven't figured out what I'm going to run it with yet. But speaking of Steelix, very similarly in the same vein as Steelix, we have another ground steel in the form of G-Fisk. Now this thing is, as you all are very well aware, top meta for a reason. It has Earthquake, Rock Slide, Mud Shot, gives it energy very quickly, and it's able to have a lot of play against so many things. And even the losses that it has against Talonflame and Charizard, those are all wins in my book, because it just has to land a Rock Slide, essentially. Now, obviously, I know one Rock Slide doesn't necessarily KO them, but, the double super effective Rock Slide, it's going to get shields. It's just not a great matchup for Talonflame and Charizard. So you're essentially stuck with things like Trevenant, Venusaur, and fighting types. And other, like, Water, so Swampert, for example, is a hard counter to G-Fisk. Like, There are definitely, it's the same stuff as Great League, folks. I mean, honestly, that's what most of this meta has basically come down to, is it's basically an XL Great League. The losses over here for G-Fisk now, yeah, I mean, it loses what you expect it to. The grasses, it does lose to some of the Fires. If they land, you dropped your Sloth. Hold on. We couldn't let her drop the Sloth. There you go, sweetie. You're welcome. The nice thing about G-Fisk is that because it's got so much bulk in the Ultra League, it could literally last long enough to get to the Earthquake against Empoleon. It, you know, decimates Kingdra by just landing an Earthquake because Kingdra is really not that bulky. Things like Walrein and an Alolan Ninetales because they're ice typing. Rock Slide takes care of them. So, and Nidoqueen is obvious. It just lands an Earthquake and bye Nidoqueen. So, Swampert. Probably not going to talk as long about Swampert, but just so you know, Swampert Shadow and then Swampert Non-Shadow, both very dominant picks. Obviously, taking out two of the top three above it, and also Nidoqueen below it. Like, Swampert is as Swampert does. It has got play against almost everything that isn't Trevenant. And even then, even the Shadow's got to play against Trevenant because it's got that Shadow boost that allows those Hydro Cannons to almost... I mean, you have to have 3 of them, I think. I haven't played that matchup because I don't usually play Trevenant or Swampert in the Ultra League Open, but... I mean, Swampert, you see it everywhere. You know how strong it is. You probably, like me, and you get yourself clapped by it over and over again. So we don't need to talk about how good Swampert is, but just keep in mind that it does beat most of the top meta and has a lot of play against just about everything else because of its Hydro Cannon and Earthquake coverage. Nidoqueen is a force to be reckoned with, as always, with the Poison Jab, Poison Fang 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 combo. It can tear through so many things, just like Steelix. The longer the matchup goes on, the worse off your opponent will probably be, or whoever's not running the Nidoqueen, more or less. Scrafty is going to clock in here at number 8, and Scrafty is probably the top primo fighter in the meta, but there are quite a few other ones that you can run. But this is probably going to be the most common. You know, you're very, very used to at this point where, you know, Scrafty's hiding in the back and it counter swaps you Drapion, or, you know, counter swaps your Walrein or what have you. And then, you know, that's the thing with Scrafty. It best functions, in my opinion, in the back as a sweeper or as a counter swap where it can get a couple of pups off, and then it can, you know, get a couple of foul plays or even bait. Like, the threat of the double boosted foul play is just stupid good. Walrein. Now, Walrein Shadow is significantly higher up on the rankings than non-Shadow Walrein, so I put it here because I have a Shadow Walrein, and I know how good it is. But even after the nerf, it's not that bad. 5 Powder Snows to an Icicle Spear is perfectly fine in Ultra League where there's enough bulk to get to those moves, and that doesn't make Walrein any worse for wear here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Walrein has play against literally everything on this page. There is not a single thing that completely walls Walrein because it has Earthquake and Icicle Spear. Now, Scrafty, obviously, going to be a bad matchup for it. Trevenant, not great if it's in a straight matchup, but, you know, if we're being honest here, like, Walrein is still good. The coverage that it has is still good, and you can't go wrong with it. And the final thing on this page is Como. Very hard to get. I understand that. Unless you've dumped a bunch of rare candies into them like I have. Uh-oh, somebody's cranky. I have dumped a lot of rare candies into my Como, which is why I have all the different evolutions, because I just throw rare candies at things. And I've got a few hatched and traded. But Como is super strong because it has a very quick close combat. It gets there in 15 turns. Gets the Dragon Claw. And Dragon Tail, like, stab Dragon Tail and Dragon Claw, if it's not resisted, that stuff hurts. Like, that will clear a Swampert very quickly. It'll even clear a Trevenant quickly if you're not careful. So, let's move on to this next group of Pokemon here. Sirfetch'd rounds up at number 11. And the reason why is because it has access to a toolkit of moves, including Leaf Blade, Night Slash, Brave Bird, and Close Combat. Now, between those 4 moves, you can put it in the lead so that you can nuke and dip, or you can put it as a safe swap because the threat of Brave Bird or having Leaf Blade, Night Slash, like being able to threaten with Brave Bird is just massive for Sirfetch'd. So, being able to use that as a way to manipulate your opponent, you know, play the mind games. I am not getting your sloth for you again. You dropped it that time. That's your fault. You having the ability to just threaten those moves is huge in and of itself, because a Sirfetch'd Brave Bird will probably one-shot or come close to one-shotting with the counter damage with a lot of things in this meta. So It's definitely worth it. It's also a good non-XL pick. And speaking of disgusting XL picks, Dubwool is next on this list. And if you're like me and you weren't smart and saved Dubwool or got good Dubwool because you're like, this thing has crappy moves, I'm not going to save it. And then here we are 2 years later and my not having Dubwool self. Wish I did. But anyway, so if you've got the Dubwool, double kick, body slam, payback is the move set here. You could run wild chart if you want to, but overall I think the coverage against the ghosts is probably better. Plus dark coverage is really not that bad in general. So I mean, when you think about things like G-Fisk and Nidoqueen and Swampert all being in the top 10, wild charge just seems a lot less useful. So so it's going to grab a lot of wins against the ghost types because of the normal typing plus the dark coverage. Usually, it's just like Greedent does very well. You can run it with tackle if you want, but double kick honestly is good enough here. Able to do the fighting type, super effective damage against things like Walrein and G-Fisk and things that may come in to try and wall it. And tackle, while it's not bad, it just doesn't have the energy gen, and I think that's what Dubwool really excels at, is getting the energy pressure with body slam, etc. So I got a couple darks on the list next here. Gonna skip over Dragonite just for a minute here. Obstagoon and Mandibuzz. So these two are some staple darks from the Ultra League. And hello, where are you going? What are you doing? Come back here, goofball. Obstagoon now has Obstruct in its moveset, and honestly, even though the Sims say Cross Chop, I think I would still probably opt for the Obstructagoon because of just how dominating and a couple of the Obstruct boosts can make that thing. You give it a shield and you get a couple of the boosts off, and that thing, you can't take that. You can't take it out. It just destroys everything. So Mandibuzz is super bulky. It's literally the Flying Umbreon, and has access to Air Slash, which you could play if you want to, but because there's such a broad array of things here, I think Snarl Foul Play, or even in my opinion, I actually like Snarl Dark Pulse, because in Ultra League having that little extra oomph for a little bit more energy is usually more effective in longer matchups, which is everywhere in Ultra League because it's Ultra League. So that's my personal take on Mandibuzz. And I mean, you could use it as a safe swap, use it as a sweep, or you could use it as a lead. Mandibuzz is very it can go anywhere. It's very flexible. There we go, that's the word I was looking for. An Obstagoon, typically if you're going to run the Obstruct version, would not be putting that in the safe swap. I would definitely either lead it or close with it, or counter swap with it rather. You don't want to safe swap an Obstagoon with Obstruct, because it's like, okay, I'm going to use the Obstruct boost, and then what? You lose the matchup anyway, probably because they safe swap, or you safe swap and they counter swap the fighter or something, right? So Lucario is another fighter that comes in here, and I know my boy Rem's loving seeing Lucario up high in the rankings like this. But truth be told, Lucario is a glass cannon here, and honestly, it's going to be kind of like Surfetched in the way that, it has several different moves. Could be close combat, could just be power up punch bait, could also be a flash cannon, it could be shadow ball. So you've got a threat, you got a lot of moves to threaten with. Someone's sleepy. You got a lot of moves to threaten the opponent with Lucario, and it's also got access to bullet punch if you see a bunch of fairies, but honestly counters just in general it's a better move. So another fighter that comes up here is Machamp. Now Machamp, usually running Shadow Machamp is going to be the preferred way to go here. The counter damage, the cross chop, like it can just two shield straight through so many things, it's actually kind of ridiculous, and having the ability to throw rock slides at things makes it so that the flyers and other things that take super effective damage from rock have something to be worried about, like fire type maybe. And now we're going to talk about Dragonite. So Dragonite recently got superpower in this update for the season, which gives it a huge fighting coverage move, which means you can lead it, throw a superpower into something like a Steel, usually before it can get to a move to hit you back, unless you're G-Fisk, and then you can basically threaten a shield or clear half their health bar before the battle's really even started. So Dragonite's super strong, and I also like it as a closer. It doesn't seem like superpower is it's a finisher move in my opinion, obviously because of the debuff, so you don't really want to use it unless you're in a situation where that's going to take out whatever you're playing against, because obviously debuffing yourself is not always the best thing. I definitely wouldn't be looking to like safe swap a Dragonite, because you just get hit with a Charmer and you got nothing. So Galvantula comes in number 19, and we all know Galvantula by now. It's an XL that's been around for a while. Having the Volt Switch is a fast move, gets to the lunge and the discharge very quickly, and also has access to Cross Poison and Energy Ball if you're spicy. But overall, Galvantula is going to run lunge and it's going to run discharge, and you're probably going to see it in the lead if you see it at all, because having the ability to like just really quickly get to a lunge and dip out before the opponent can get to a move is really, really strong. So moving on here, we're going to go to the next page, which has Miltank and Escavalier and Greedent. Some more middling picks right here, like, you know, Miltank and Greedent both recently got Tackle. I still personally think I prefer Greedent with Bullet Seed for the most part, because I like it as a safe swap, and that energy and the spamming of the body slams is just so good. But Miltank having Tackle, I have used that thing actually in factions for the first time last weekend. I can say that if it's not being walled by like a steel type or something, those tackles and body slams are very lethal. And Miltank can be packing Thunderbolt, could be packing Ice Beam. Hard to say, and you never know. Usually it's going to run Ice Beam so they can deal with the Trevenant, which is the primary ghost in this meta. You could run Thunderbolt if you see a bunch of jelly, but I mean, you gotta make the decision, and you gotta figure out what you're gonna get walled by in that case. So, Escavalier is another one, and I feel like I'm not hitting the matchups and stuff as much as I can, but I mean, not a lot of this stuff is good. You know, this is a lot of old news here. But like Miltank, for example, like the strength of Miltank is being able to really like just whittle away the opponent's HP with those tackles pretty quickly, to be honest, and then just, you know, putting body slams and whatever the other coverage move is on as just a little bit of spice on the I was gonna say spice on the soup or icing on the cake, whatever metaphor you want to use. Yeah, she knows. She likes the cow. So, if the opponent's not like straight up resisting the moves, right, or they're not able to outpace and out spam and out damage the Miltank, like that thing can just like straight rip through stuff. I've seen it in its 2 shield matchups are really strong when you take away resistances. Like if it's not facing a steel type, rock type, something that actually just like resists the tackle damage, it just rips through things so much. Like, it's disgusting. So Escavalier is a tried and true staple to the Ultra League metas in general. Escavalier really shines when there's less ghost types in the meta, because counter is double resisted by ghost, and that's just a thing. And I don't know about you, but I saw like one. The only other thing I saw here that that Escavalier can't really deal with was Mandibuzz, and everything else it has some play against. Okay, Dragonite maybe, but Dragonite's still a dragon type. It's still steel, and I mean, it's still got play. So like, there's not a whole lot here that Escavalier can't tangle with, and that's why it's very strong. It's got a lot of charge move access to it. It's got Acid Spray, Aerial Ace. It's also usually running though Drill Run and Mega Horn. Escavalier is just, it's a very consistent pick that hard counters just so many things that you might see, like the ground poison, you know, and Nidoqueen, the ground steel, and G-Fisk and Steelix. Doesn't really do so hot against Swampert and Trevenant, but it can put a hurting on things like Scrafty and Como because it resists Walrein. It's like one of the hardest counters too. So yeah, you've got a lot of play with Escavalier. Now Greedent, been around for a while. Greedent doesn't really take much kind to being out damaged, so it's got a lot of bulk, and if the opponent doesn't have like some fast hitting or fast charging, strong hitting charge moves like Hydro Cannon or Frenzy Plant, typically Greedent can't keep up with stuff like that. But if you give it a little bit of an energy lead, and those body slams come out so quick, or even crunches for that matter, Greedent is a really good safe swap, and also really good answer to the next one, which is Snorlax. Now, I personally prefer Shadow Snorlax as my flavor of Lax, but normal Snorlax is still just as good, has plenty of bulk to work with, and, you know, being able to threaten with a toolbox of moves, right? You could run the standard Body Slam superpower, or you could run it with Earthquake, Outrage. I guess you could run it with Heavy Slam if you wanted to. Skull Bash is interesting, takes a while to get to, but gives you the defense boost. And you can run it with Hyper Beam too if you wanted to. There's just so much that you could use this with. Obviously, the fast move on this is going to be Lick. It's really primarily used as a bulky normal type with very few weaknesses. Obviously, it's only weak to fighting. That has the fighting coverage, but also is like a straight up anti-ghost because of the bulk and the Lick damage. So, I've always kind of liked Snorlax. It's a really, really awesome non-XL pick, so it's really useful for those of you who either don't have or can't yet get XL candies for some of these other XL picks. It's able to contend with the best of them, to be honest. Its hardest counter in this meta is probably Scrafty, and even then, you know, Superpower is still going to threaten shields on that thing. So, moving on down here, though, we're going to talk about Blaziken, because I like Blaziken in a Walrein Trevenant meta. Being able to have a moveset that really can threaten both sides of that core with the fire damage against the Trevenant, and then the counter damage, I mean, and the fire damage too, for that matter, for the Walrein. Some super strong, you know, kind of damage that if you see a lot of Trevenant Walrein cores in this meta, Blaziken's definitely a solid pick. Now, Walrein and Trevenant also do have to contend with Abomasnow being in this meta. Now, Abomasnow is falling out a bit because there's so many things we talked about that compete it, right? You know, Escavalier, Snorlax, and Blaziken and Talonflame just being things on this page alone. But then you've got, you know, all the fighters that we talked about. Steelix and G-Fisk can probably make pretty decent short work of it. Even Nidoqueen with shields easily just rips through Abomasnow. So while it's falling off, it's certainly not a bad core breaker. Worth noting, if you've got one, that you could keep your eye out for a meta shift in which it might be useful. And then Talonflame, you know, is a huge Ultra League staple. Flame Charge and Brave Bird are the coverage moves of choice here. Both stab damage, absolutely just destructive. You can let this thing get a little bit of energy, give it some shields, and it sweeps teams, and you already know just how that can be. Just if you've been following my channel for a while, or really anybody else who runs Talonflame, to be honest, like there's plenty of showcases out there where Talonflame gets a shield advantage and just sweeps a team because it gets a Flame Charge boost and just starts going. So always have to be careful with Talonflame because of that, but it's really easy to time your fast moves around because of how long and clumsy those Incinerates are. So, and then one that's near and dear to my heart, Shadow Drapion, is going to be, yet again, but of course, because it is Shadow Drapion, probably one of the best safe swaps in this cup. It's going to be able to draw out things like the Swampert or the G-Fisk or even the Steelix possibly, and still have a chance at, you know, flipping those matchups with Aqua Tail or even the Crunch if you get the debuffs. Drapion is just a disgustingly strong Pokemon in really any meta that it's in, but like especially these Ultra League metas where if you got a Shadow boost and you know, a Crunch debuff, like between those two things, Drapion can just go off. And sometimes the RNG just isn't in your favor and Drapion falls flat on its face, but for the most part, yeah, it's good. So the next page here, so this is, we're going straight down this page here. So next we're gonna have Tentacruel. So if you've played in Weather Cup and if you played in Ultra League Halloween Cup, you probably have Tentacruel built. And honestly, I'm getting there. I'm thinking about it because I've got the XLs for it. I just don't want to put the dust in there yet. And it seems like every time I'm telling myself I don't need to build this thing, and it turns around and be like, you should do it. It's good. And it just hurts my soul. So Tentacruel has a lot of different moves. It's got the Poison Jab that makes it really consistent, but it's got Scald, it's got Sludge Wave, it's got Blizzard, it's got Acid Spray, it's got Hydro Pump. So a couple of nukes in there. Scald has the chance to lower the opponent's attack, and Acid Spray, as you know, annoyingly enough, is able to double drop the opponent's defense, which means Tentacruel has some really solid 2-shield matchups in this meta and any other meta it's in because of that. Another poison type on this page is Dragalge, which is a poison dragon type. So one of the hardest walls to some things on this page. So really good at walling things like the Scrafty, able to wall, you know, most of the fighters, honestly. And then does a really good job at walling the can't speak, the Drapion, because it's got that heavy fast move damage from Dragon Tail. Aqua Tail is nice and spammy, can deal with some things like, you know, rock types or fire types that you may see, like Talonflame. So it's hard wall against Talonflame too, pretty much. And also really good against Tentacruel, which is kind of ironic that it's right here. But it does lose to things that do ground type damage, or just nuke damage that isn't resisted, right? So like Talonflame technically is a loss, because if it gets the flame charge bait with the Brave Bird, then yeah, of course. And I mean, anything is going to lose to that. Talonflame, just that's why it's so strong in The Sims, is because it gets that flame charge bait and then hits with a Brave Bird, and then it's game over. But when it comes to Dragalge, it's also got access to acids, or not acid spray, it's Gunk Shot and Hydro Pump. And you could run it with Water Gun if you want to also, but when it comes to Dragalge, typically you're going to go Dragon Tail, Aqua Tail, and then your choice of nuke. Probably going to go Outrage in this meta. As you can see, we haven't seen a single Charmer yet at all in the top 30 plus here. I mean, even this page goes down to almost the top 40. We haven't seen a single fairy yet. So it's safe to say that in this meta, fairies are probably not going to be as prevalent, but people are going to find a way to play them anyway. And if you're playing the poison types, more power to you. I hope you clap the Charmers, because I hate Charmers too. Umbreon is going to be next on my page here. Also able to sport Psychic to nuke the poisons a bit. If you saw recently on the channel, we had Bosch on the channel, and he had a one-shot somebody's Toxicroak with a Psychic Umbreon. So they're out there, folks. But Umbreon is able to dominate things like the ghost types, and while it doesn't really seem like it does well against things like G-Fisk and Swampert, Nidoqueen, like, those aren't dominating matchups by any means. Umbreon is so thick that it can really, like, make a lot of these not so great matchups really close, or with shields even potentially flip them if you call a bait correctly, things like that. So Umbreon's just strong. It always is and always will be. So Meganium is going to come up next here on the list. Now Meganium has access to Earthquake as well as Frenzy Plant, so it has the nuke move for the poisons. It has the Frenzy Plant for a lot of other things, for that neutral or even super effective. It's just stab damage. It hurts really bad. Like, Frenzy Plant is no joke. And really the only things that wall Meganium at all are flying types. So we got Dragonite, you know, and Mandibuzz. Like, those are definitely not things that Meganium enjoys seeing, but the moveset makes it so that Earthquake is allowing you to hit the steel types that typically would wall your grass types. So it's still useful if you've got it. Skarmory, very RPS sort of mon here. If you've got an XL Skarmory built, still sporting the same moveset as it would down in Great League. It's got the triple flyer coverage. I mean, it's good if it's not aligned to something that completely destroys it. And that's really all there is to say about Skarmory. Altaria is kind of the same. Like, XL Altaria, I don't have one. Kind of left it off here. I started to kind of go to the spicier stuff after the Skarmory here, but it's still worth talking about Altaria because it's basically a thicker version of Dragonite, but it doesn't have Dragon Claw, so you're going to have the Sky Attack coverage instead, which I feel like is probably a lot less useful in this meta because, I mean, what do you think about it? Like, the only fighters that you're probably going to see, okay, there's Scrafty. I mean, Altaria is plenty good, but Walrein being in this meta does not help it whatsoever. And then Dragonite being really strong in this meta as well. And since it outpaces the Altaria, it does kind of lose to it. So, Samurott is a non-XL Pokemon that you could run. And the Fury Cutter into Hydro Cannon is so quick. I think it actually outpaces Swampert, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it's very close. So Samurott is a really awesome non-XL Pokemon that you can run, and because it has access to Mega Horn, it's actually able to flip a lot of the water like mirror matches. Like, so if you've got, you know, you're up against Swampert or you're up against a Walrein, that Mega Horn actually allows you to flip a lot of these matchups. And obviously against Swampert, I know the Hydro Cannon does neutral anyway, but like even look against Empoleon, like those Hydro Cannons coming out as quick as they do can flip that. Now, I know in Great League, Samurott can flip Venusaur. I don't think it can here in Ultra League. But even still, like the Mega Horn is still plenty of pressure for a grass type to have to deal with, because even if it's just neutral damage, that still hurts a lot. And then everything else, like the onslaught of Hydro Cannons, just makes Samurott very, very dangerous when played in the right hands. We've got things like Venusaur, you know, Shadow Skuntank, Cofagrigus. I'm not going to spend too much time because you're probably not going to see as many of those. Politoed here is worth a mention because it's one that a lot of people already have built. And Lantern, if you've been playing Celestial Factions, you might have a Lantern built. So Lantern still fills the same role here, able to beat fires and waters, and is so bulky in this league that if you don't have a direct hard counter to it, it's extremely thick. I'm talking like Cresselia levels of thick. It's disgusting. And Politoed, once again, we're kind of touching on Politoed, can come in Shadow or normal. Weather Ball is super quick. You could even run it with Surf. Slightly stronger than Weather Ball. It takes a little bit more energy. And then you've got your choice of whether you want to run it with Blizzard or Earthquake, depending on the meta you're seeing. Like, you could save swap it, try and, you know, pull a Trevenant out, and then Blizzard it, either nuke it or force a shield. That's always fun. So there's that. And then the last page here was like some more slightly spicier stuff. And I realized the video is starting to run long here, so I will kind of just fly through it. But so I like Goodra a lot. It's got Power Whip and it's got Muddy Water, but you can also threaten with Draco Meteor. So just as a dragon, it's got some bulk to it, and it's got some good coverage against, you know, you could, like, you guys saw maybe, if you've been watching the channel for a little bit, in Ultra League Premier Classic, I used Goodra with my Porygon 2, and I was able to threaten a lot of the Trevenant Walrein cores with it, because I was able to farm down, you know, maybe shield, farm down a Trevenant, and then have Power Whips loaded for the Walreins when they came in. And you can say the same thing for Venusaur too. It's really strong in a meta where not many steel types are very common, so it's just, yeah, I mean, like, even fire types, you can still hit them with the Sludge Bomb and still do a ton of damage. Now, speaking of poison types, you have Overquill on this as well. Overquill is interesting, and I always say this with just about every meta that they Overquill and Hisuian Quillfish are in, but they have a toolbox sort of moveset, you know, Aqua Tail, Shadow Ball. They're going to have access to Ice Beam, Dark Pulse. It's really just, you know, pick and choose your poison, and you're always going to have shield pressure on your opponent just because of the fear of what if they have this move. Toxicroak could be played as a non-XL, and then, by the way, these all are non-XL Pokemon that you can run in this league that do fairly well. Now, Toxicroak has to be a Hundo not to be an XL, otherwise you start getting into XL territory, but being able to have the anti-fighting with the poison, having counter, which is probably the best fast move in the game, having access to Mud Bomb, Sludge Bomb, which means you can hit back against things like Nidoqueen or Charmers or whatever else might come in against your Toxicroak, has a lot of play. Now, Gyarados is one that I like because it's got the water typing to it, which means that those Aqua Tails that usually has your stab damage, it's a hard wall to Swampert. Scrafty doesn't like it too much. Walrein kind of clowns on it, but against other dragons it really does excel because it has Dragon Breath and is able to hit those Pokemon for super effective damage while typically not taking anything more than neutral itself. Heracross fills a similar role to Toxicroak in that it's got an anti-fighting role. It has different coverage moves. You could run it with Mega Horn, Close Combat for a nuke. It even has access to Earthquake, I believe. And then it has Rock Blast for a bait move. So Heracross, really fun pick. It has a lot of play. Just a matter of you know, grabbing the right team around it. Lapras is another Pokemon that you can run with XL, but don't have to. If you have like a Raid IV one like I do, you can just use a non-XL Lapras. It'll work just fine. Skull Bash and Ice Beam are both very strong. I think in this meta, though, I definitely run it with Skull Bash, though, just because in case you get saddled up against something like a... you know, another water type, you can use that Skull Bash damage to hopefully help flip that matchup. And then just in general, like being able to have the, you know, farm down or just be able to go straight for a Skull Bash and boost your defense to help flip matchups is really huge. And Gallade is the last one on this list, but it's one that I seriously love a lot. You guys know Gallade by now. It's been around several seasons in Ultra League Premier Cup Classic and even in other Ultra Premier Cups in general. Seems to core really well with G-Fisk, and it can pop off. If it's got close combat and Leaf Blade as its charge moves, Confusion gets there fairly quickly, and, you know, as long as it's not up against things like Trevenant or against, you know, like Charizard or, you know, Talonflame, stuff like that, like you can keep Gallade off of those. Very, very strong Pokemon indeed. So just some example cores and safe swaps you can expect to see in this meta. First, we've obviously got the Trevenant Walrein core. Walrein also cores pretty well with Toxicroak because it can deal with flying types. It can deal with whatever ghost types are in the meta typically. Obviously, Trevenant cores better with Walrein than Toxicroak, but I think that this could be a good trio here if you wanted to give it a shot. The Swampert Skarmory core lives on in this godforsaken cup with all these XLs, but it's... you know, it's still just as strong as it is in Great League. So you throw a common, you know, safe swap back there. Maybe you throw, you know, your Shadow Drapion back there. You're looking at a really solid team just for that, you know, core alone. Nidoqueen Scrafty comes up with like every one of these that I do. If it's legal, you play it. It's really strong. It's one of the strongest cores I've ever played. And then the final core that I want to talk about is the G-Fisk Mandibuzz and the G-Fisk Gallade cores, because really... I think that G-Fisk and Mandibuzz now are probably the better core here. Gallade sort of fell off when Trevenant came into the meta, so it's not as common anymore, but it could definitely be a good safe swap if you needed to. You could even do, you know, it's really just because of the fact that one takes Charm well and the other one doesn't. So it's just, you know, Mandibuzz beats most of the things that G-Fisk can't and vice versa. So some safe swaps, though, that are going to be really common in this meta, I feel. Umbreon, obviously a Dark-type safe swap. It's pretty staple, pretty common. Snorlax, always there to bait out your fighters, so if you've got another answer to it like Mandibuzz, probably best to throw that in there. They're probably trying to bait out a fighting type so that they can sweep with whatever's in the back. And then we talked about Steelix a bit at length already, but I just love Steelix in this meta because those Psychic Fangs allow it to flip a lot of matchups. And Drapion really is the best investment you could make in Ultra League. And if you don't have a Shadow Drapion, that's the one I would make. I don't like regular Drapion so much. It just doesn't feel as good to me. But, I mean, it's up to you. It's your Stardust. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Maggie here is going to sleep. And I'm going to be not too far behind her. If you couldn't tell, I'm already yawning my face off here. And just real quick, gonna plug the patrons. Thank you guys so much. Also, just shout out to all of you for the support and just the wonderful, wonderful people that you are. If you're looking to get into that patron Discord, it's going to have early access to all these meta-analysis, all the videos that I do, all my teams that I put on YouTube here. And it also gets you a discount on coaching, which I do coach on Metafy. So, link in the description for both the coaching and the Patreon in the Discord, or in the description for that. And I mean that's on. I'm just gonna end the plug there because that's all I got for. So, thanks so much for watching, all y'all. Catch you in the next one. Bye bye.